Hey guys, how's it going? Hope you're doing well. My name is Crown, and today I'm going to read you some very interesting stories that I hope that you're gonna love. And now, without further ado, let's go!
I'm a single mom with a 7-year-old boy. Life's been tough, but I've always dreamed of becoming a nurse. So, last month I finally took the plunge and went back to school. It's been a challenge, especially balancing study time with being there for my son. The guilt was eating me alive. I felt like I was neglecting my little guy, even though I knew this was for our future. That's when I had this brilliant idea, or so I thought, to combine quality time with my son and study time for me. I decided to take him to Science World. It's this amazing place where kids can explore and learn while having fun. My plan was simple: spend some time with him exploring exhibits, then find a quiet spot to study while he played independently. The day started great. We spent 2 solid hours going from one exhibit to another, his eyes wide with wonder at every new discovery. Then, as I'd hoped, he found this awesome sensory activity that had him completely engrossed. I saw my chance. I found a seat nearby where I could keep an eye on him and pulled out my laptop and textbook. I was on a roll, cramming in as much study time as I could, when suddenly I felt something climbing up my leg. I looked down to see this little boy, maybe 3 or 4 years old, trying to get his hands on my laptop. Now let me tell you why this was a big no-no for me. 1. This laptop cost me half my monthly rent. It's practically new, and I need it for school. 2. We're still in the tail end of a pandemic, and this kid was a walking germ factory. 3. Most importantly, this wasn't my kid, so definitely not my responsibility. I looked around for the kid's parent, hoping they'd come whisk him away with profuse apologies. Instead, I spotted this woman who was clearly his mom, just standing there with a vacant smile. I politely asked the woman to take her son, explaining that he was trying to play with my laptop. To my surprise, she casually dismissed my concern, saying it was okay. I tried to make her understand that it really wasn't okay, as I was trying to study and couldn't have her child touching my computer. But she insisted that he was just playing and suggested I let him look at it for a bit. This woman thought it was perfectly fine for her kid to mess with a stranger's expensive equipment, but 2 could play at this game. I sarcastically offered to teach the boy something if he was so interested in what I was doing. The mother shrugged and nonchalantly agreed. Now, here's where it gets good. I'm studying healthcare, and the chapter I was on was all about the lower digestive tract. So I decided to give this little boy a crash course in poop. For the next 15 minutes, I taught him about the Bristol stool chart, the muscles involved in digestion, and all sorts of fun facts about bowel movements. The kid was fascinated, repeating every new term with glee. Finally, I decided it was time for the grand finale. I suggested to the boy that he go tell his mommy what he had learned. The kid ran off excitedly, and I watched with barely contained glee as he approached his mom in the quiet zone of the museum. He shouted at the top of his lungs, announcing to his mother and everyone else within earshot that he had learned about poop and various related facts. He even exclaimed that she too had a butt muscle. She turned beet red as everyone in the vicinity stopped to stare. Some people were chuckling, others looked scandalized, but all eyes were on her. The mother frantically tried to quiet her son, hissing at him that they don't talk about such things in public. But the boy, oblivious to her embarrassment, only got louder. He excitedly told her about the nice lady who taught him all about poop and offered to share more details about the different types. Karen grabbed her son's hand and practically dragged him out of the area. As they passed by me, she shot me a death glare and angrily whispered that what I had done was completely inappropriate. I just smiled sweetly and echoed her earlier words, saying it was okay and that the boy was just learning. I could hear the kid still chattering excitedly about his new knowledge. Sometimes, the best way to deal with entitled people is to give them exactly what they ask for, just not in the way they expect. My girlfriend and I had been dating for about 2 years at that point, and we'd recently adopted a lovable mutt we named Buddy. We lived in a small apartment in the city, so taking Buddy to the dog park was our weekend ritual. The dog park was always busy on weekends, with a gravel parking lot that was more of a free-for-all than an organized space. People usually managed to park in some semblance of order, but it was far from perfect. On this particular day, we arrived a little later than usual, and the lot was packed. As we pulled in, I noticed a spot opening up near the entrance. Perfect timing. I carefully maneuvered our old sedan into the space, making sure to leave enough room on both sides for other cars to open their doors. My girlfriend and I got out, grabbed Buddy from the back seat, and headed into the park. We spent about an hour at the park, letting Buddy run around and play with the other dogs. It was a great day, and we were in high spirits as we headed back to the car. That's when things took a turn for the worse. I noticed a piece of paper tucked under my car's windshield wiper. At first, I thought it was just an advertisement, but my girlfriend picked it up and gasped. She exclaimed in shock that someone had hit our car. I asked her if she was serious. I rushed over to see what she was talking about. Sure enough, there was a large scrape along the driver's side of our car from the front bumper all the way to the back door. The paint was badly damaged, and the front bumper was slightly dented. I wondered aloud who would do something like this and just leave. My girlfriend handed me the note. It read, "Saw someone hit your car. Call me if you need a witness." I was furious, but also grateful that someone had seen what happened and left their contact information. We decided to call the police non-emergency line to report the hit and run. While we waited for an officer to arrive, we kept an eye on the parking lot entrance, hoping to spot the culprit if they tried to leave. To our surprise, a police officer approached us on foot. It turned out she and her partner were off duty walking their own dog in the park. Talk about lucky timing. We explained the situation and she took our information. She then stepped away to call the witness who had left the note. When the officer returned, she informed us that she had spoken with the witness and needed to investigate further. She asked for our address, saying she would get back to us at home. We provided our details and the officer assured us she'd be in touch. Feeling a bit deflated but relieved that, at least, something was being done, we decided to head home. On the way, we stopped to get the car washed, carefully avoiding the damaged area. At home, we took pictures of the damage and called our insurance company. A few hours later, there was a knock at the door. It was the same police officer from earlier. The officer informed us that she had completed her investigation and that the person who hit our car had been issued a ticket for failing to report an accident. She handed us a copy of the report for our records. I thanked her profusely for her help and inquired about the amount of the fine. She told us it was a $200 fine and offered to help if we needed anything else. We were relieved that the person had been caught and ticketed, but I couldn't help feeling that a $200 fine wasn't nearly enough for the damage they'd caused. A few months passed, and our car had been repaired. The total cost came to about $1,300, which our insurance covered. We'd almost forgotten about the incident when I received an unexpected phone call. The caller identified themselves as the Crown prosecutor handling the case of the hit-and-run incident we were involved in. They explained that the offender was contesting the ticket and we'd need to appear in court as witnesses. The prosecutor asked me to provide more details about what happened that day. I recounted the events, and the prosecutor informed me that I'd be receiving a summons to appear in court in a couple of months. When the day arrived, my girlfriend and I headed to the courthouse, feeling nervous but determined to see this through. The courtroom was bustling with activity. There were other people contesting various tickets, speeding, parking violations, and the like. We watched as case after case was dismissed due to the ticketing officers not being present. Finally, it was our turn. To our surprise, the person who hit our car didn't show up, but they had sent a representative from a legal service. The police officer who had helped us that day was there, as well as the witness who had left a note on our windshield. The judge called the case, and we were asked to wait outside until it was our turn to testify. My girlfriend went first while I waited in the hallway with the police officer. I took the opportunity to thank the officer again for all her help that day, and she humbly responded that she was just doing her job. After what felt like forever, I was called in to testify. I took the oath and sat down. The prosecutor asked me to recount the events of the day in question. I explained how we discovered the damage and the note left by the witness. The prosecutor then brought up the invoice for the repairs and requested to enter it as evidence. The offender's representative objected, arguing that it was being introduced too late. After some back and forth, the judge allowed it. The prosecutor then asked me to confirm the total amount for the repairs, which I did, stating it was $1,300. The offender's representative then took his turn questioning me. He asked me to confirm that the invoice showed the cost of parts was $400, which I did. He then stated he had no further questions. I was dismissed, and the police officer was called to testify. Her account was far more detailed than I expected. The officer described how, after speaking with the witness, she obtained the license plate of the van involved in the incident. She went to the registered address and spoke with the offender, who admitted to hitting the car. The offender explained that she had sideswiped it with her van, got out to assess the damage, and then left, without reporting it. The officer went on to describe how the offender's husband had tried to switch out their van before the police arrived, but the officer had caught on to their attempt at deception. The offender's representative tried to argue technicalities like the exact address on the ticket, but the judge wasn't having any of it. When it came time for the final decision, we were on the edge of our seats. The judge declared that, having heard all the evidence, he found the charge of failing to report an accident to be valid. Furthermore, he increased the fine to the maximum amount of $500. The offender's representative pleaded for leniency, citing potential insurance issues. However, the judge stated that the offender's relationship with their insurance company was a personal matter and not the concern of the court. He reiterated that the fine would stand at $500. We left the courthouse feeling relieved and grateful. I'm glad we could finally put this whole thing behind us. My cousin and I were inseparable, always getting into mischief together. We weren't bad kids, just curious and full of energy. There was this other boy at our school who always tried to one-up everyone. He thought he was better than us, and it drove me crazy. One day, this kid, let's call him the bully, came up to me with a dare. He bet me that I couldn't jump off the clock tower, offering a whole pound of my favorite dessert from the bakery if I did it. Now, I loved sweets and that dessert was my favorite. Plus, I couldn't back down from a challenge, especially not from him. So, without thinking it through, I accepted his challenge and told him to watch me do it. I climbed up that clock tower, heart pounding. When I reached the first floor, I looked down. It seemed so high, but I couldn't chicken out now. I took a deep breath and jumped. The pain was immediate. I felt my ankles crack when I hit the ground. The bully's eyes went wide with fear. He exclaimed in shock, realizing what he had done. He quickly put me on his bicycle and pedaled as fast as he could to my house. He dumped me at the front door and sped away, before anyone could see him. I spent the next 6 months recovering, my legs in casts. My family thought I'd fallen from a tree or something. I was too embarrassed to tell them the truth. When I finally went back to school, I was ready to collect my prize. I asked the bully about my dessert, but he pretended not to know what I was talking about. He acted like the bet never happened. I was furious. That's when my cousin and I came up with a plan to teach him a lesson. We waited for the perfect moment when no one would be around. Then we jumped him. We managed to pin him down, feeling pretty proud of ourselves. But then we realized our big mistake. I asked my cousin what we should do next, and he replied that he didn't know, worrying that if we let the bully go, he'd beat us up. So there we were, all three of us crying. The bully pinned under us, and us sitting on top of him, too scared to move. It must have been quite a sight. After what felt like forever, the bully's older brother walked by and saw us. He asked what was going on. The bully complained that we had jumped him and beat him up. His brother then questioned why we were crying if we had beaten up the bully. My cousin and I explained that we were afraid the bully would beat us up if we let him go. The bully's brother burst out laughing. He couldn't stop. Eventually, he helped us all up and made sure no one got hurt anymore. The bully's brother thought the whole thing was so funny. He told my older brother, and, well, word travels fast in a small town. My grandmother found out about everything, the clock tower jump, the bet, the fight. She was furious. As punishment, she made me eat nothing but that dessert for a whole month straight. Let me tell you, there's nothing worse than too much of a good thing. To this day, I can't even look at that dessert without feeling sick. The bully got in trouble too. His parents grounded him for a month and made him apologize to me and my family. After that, he stopped trying to show off so much. We even became kind of friends. Looking back, it was a pretty silly thing to do. But hey, that's what being a kid is all about, right? My husband and I were overjoyed when we learned we were expecting our first child. However, our happiness was soon overshadowed by my mother-in-law's increasingly bizarre behavior. From the moment we announced the pregnancy, she became overly involved, calling multiple times daily for updates. When our daughter was born, she arrived at the hospital unannounced, pushing past my own mother to reach the baby. She spoke of taking our child home, revealing she had prepared a nursery at her house. A week after bringing our daughter home, my mother-in-law presented us with papers, declaring her intention to seek primary custody. She argued that we were too young and inexperienced, insisting she knew best as she had raised my husband. We were shocked but tried to reason with her, explaining that while we appreciated her love for our daughter, we were the parents and would raise our child ourselves. A month later, we were served with court papers. My mother-in-law was suing for custody, claiming we were unfit parents because we wouldn't let her be the primary caregiver. In court, she argued that her years of experience made her the best choice, even boasting about her fully equipped nursery. The judge dismissed the case, stating she had no legal grounds for custody. We thought the ordeal was over, but we were mistaken. A week later, I woke to find our baby missing from her crib. A note on the changing table read, "I'm taking the baby for a day of proper parenting. You'll thank me when you see how much better she responds to my care." Panic-stricken, we called the police, who issued an Amber Alert. Hours later, my mother-in-law appeared at our door with our daughter, acting as if nothing was wrong. She smugly suggested we could now learn from her example. Before I could react, 2 police officers arrived and arrested her for kidnapping. When they led her away, she shouted that we were ungrateful and would regret this. My mother-in-law was ultimately charged with kidnapping and attempted custodial interference. She received a 5-year prison sentence with mandatory counseling, and we were granted a permanent restraining order against her. A year has passed since then, and our lives have settled into a peaceful routine. My husband has severed all ties with his mother, recognizing how toxic and dangerous her behavior was. We're raising our daughter surrounded by supportive family and friends who respect our roles as parents. And now we have reached the end of today's stories. Thank you for watching, and see you next time.